So one of the things you need to make sure that you do while you are making a Cu-Mai this way is flip your billet pretty often so that you don't have one side just consistently on the flame side of this forge, because where that flame's hitting it will end up melting the copper. And we just want to get it hot enough evenly throughout the billet so that we can start forge welding. And what I was doing is I was getting it more towards a glowing orange, not so much a bright yellow, or up to regular steel forge welding temps. Now, I was a little worried while I was doing the first couple of forging processes because I felt like it was delaminating because my anvil face, even though I had warmed it up, was not as warm as it needed to be. But after the third time forging on the anvil, it warmed up to where it needed to be, and we got a nice forge weld throughout this billet. Now, one of the things that I'm not showing y'all is the point where I actually unwrapped the belling wire that was wrapping this. So I got it to where it forge welded. I knew it was welded, so I went ahead and took all the belling wire that was left off so that we weren't forging that into the billet further and further each time. Now, as we're doing this, we are flipping the billet each time, and by flipping it, I mean where I'm holding the billet right now by the tongs. Whenever I put it back in the forge and pull it out, I'm going to be hammering on that section. So right now, where the tongs are at, that's where I was forging last time. And I just keep rotating it, rotating it, rotating it, so that we're not accidentally putting a weird wave into the billet, and we're keeping that center layer centered the whole entire time. Because this can easily get away from you, and you can focus on one side too much, or not turn your billet over enough and hammer from the other side, and you'll make your edge wander. We don't want that to happen on this because of the way that we're going to be doing our bevels. So we want to be consistent with how we're hammering this and making sure that we're rotating it and flipping it each time we start forging this. And the goal here is to forge it down to about 2/3 of its thickness. And once we do that, then we're going to take it to the drill press and drill some more holes in it to even more intensify the pattern that's going to be in it. So right now, all I'm focusing on is getting it to where it's an even thickness throughout the whole entire billet, and I'm flattening it out and making it nice and smooth so that whenever we cut off any of the excess, basically any of the parts that forged a little bit around the 15 and 20 core, we're going to take and we're going to grind all of that stuff off so that we have a nice clean billet. And then we're going to take that billet and drill into it, which I'll see here in a second. So I'm just taking a 1/4 of an inch drill bit and drilling through the first layer of copper, the layer of 15 and 20, and into the second layer of copper. So this gives it a cool ring effect whenever we forge this out. And what I've already done was, when I just had the Mokumegane billets by themselves, I had done this process, drilled just through the copper layer and into the 15 and 20 to give it some type of figure. And now I'm doing it again, but I'm going even deeper, and then we're going to take this and forge it out, and it should give us a cool pattern whenever we actually start grinding in our bevels. So now that we have those holes drilled, we're going to go ahead and forge this out again and take it down to about 2/3 of its current thickness, which is going to get us down to about 1/4 of an inch thick. That's a pretty thick billet, but for the amount of just stuff that's going to be going on with this knife and the bevels and everything, I wanted everything to stand out and be pretty dramatic. So that's why I am forging it as thick as I am. Now you saw right there, that was me spinning the billet so that I'm forging the opposite side each go around. And not only am I spinning it, I am flipping it, because again, we're trying to manage our material and we want to keep everything even and centered down the entire billet so that we end up with a really good looking even blade whenever we start grinding in our bevels. Now I am going to be going pretty aggressive on my hammer strikes on this because we are trying to get it forged out and we're trying to get it to where those divots that we drilled are perfectly even with the surface. And whenever you do that, what ends up happening is where the steel and the copper has been thinned down from the drilling process, it leaves an area for all the stuff inside that divot to rise to the top. So you're not just forging everything down, you're also squeezing everything up into that divot that was drilled out. So it's going to make a real cool wave effect, plus have the different layers in there. And compounding the secondary holes that I drilled and the first ones, I think that this is going to be a pretty cool pattern. And that's what we're trying to achieve on this. So a lot of people get cool patterns in their mokamegane by doing 10, 15 layers and then doing a ladder pattern or a raindrop pattern, and all of the layers create the really cool effect. What I'm doing is getting the cool effect without having to have the insane amount of layers. Even though there's 13 layers in this billet, I didn't want to have 30 layers by the time it was all said and done. Now, as I start getting to the end of this forging process, I'm going to be focusing on keeping everything nice and square. So my hammer blows are all going to be as uniform as possible, because at this point I'm not so much trying to stretch out the material as I am trying to even everything out so that I do not have to grind anything flat on this. I'm not going to be taking this to my platen and grinding it smooth or anything like that. So everything that I'm doing right now is purely just to make it to where I have as smooth of a surface as possible so that my handle scales marry to it real well and everything is nice and where, again, it's supposed to be. Now I'll tell you, one of the things that I've been really proud of with getting used to the forging process here is I have been able to make my billets and my knife builds super flat and super uniform. By the time this is all said and done, it is 1/4 of an inch thick exactly throughout the entire billet. There's no variation or anything. It is exactly where I wanted it to be, and that's pretty cool because I'm doing all of this by eye. I'm not measuring as I go through, so that makes me feel more and more comfortable with my hammer technique and be able to do things like this, because as I get more and more confident with my hammering technique, the more I'm going to be able to just forge so many different things in my bladesmithing career. So all of this is practice, and it is awesome being able to get used to this process and just fall in love with it. You know, I was already in love with making knives, but I've just fallen more in love with this process as I'm getting better at the forging process. And I know I didn't forge this particular billet to the knife shape, and primarily that's because I wanted to keep everything where it was, and I didn't want to split anything open or apart. So there was a reason behind it. But in some of the other knife builds that we're going to be doing, those are going to be forged to shape, just like the giveaway knife that we've been working on. But this is turning out pretty nice. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap up this video. Now, when it boils down to it, you're not going to be able to see a ton of what's going on in this billet because we haven't started grinding in bevels and stuff like that. That's what we're going to be working on in the next video. But you can actually see all of the layers that we have going on here. So it's a thicker layer of 15 and 20, two thicker layers of copper, and then on either side of that copper, there's 5 layers of 15 and 20 of copper and 5 layers of 15 and 20 copper right here, for a grand total of 13 layers of copper and 15 and 20 in this billet. Now, this right here is the design that we're going to be going with for the knife. I think it's going to be really cool. I wanted to be able to bring the bevels up pretty high so we could show off a lot of what's going on in this blade. And then we're doing a false edge up top so that this can actually, the bevel can actually meet it, and it's going to leave really cool designs going all the way down to the tip. I think that this is just going to be a really cool knife and really unique, and I'm super excited about seeing it ground out. But that right there is the overall design. One of the things that I was happy about with this is I was able to keep everything centered down the billet. So all of the 15 and 20 is nice and centered all the way down and all the way around. So I'm really happy about that. With a lot of stuff going into this and hoping that a lot of this stuff would work, such as only holding everything together with baling wire and forging it out as much as we forged this out. To give you an idea, we started, like, if y'all remember and y'all look back at the actual pieces of copper and 15 and 20 that we started with, it was a very small setup. So I think we started with about 6 inches of length of copper and 15 and 20, and then forged that out to create the outer cladding billets, and then we took that and stacked it to 15 and 20 and copper, and then forged all the way out with that. And the overall billet that we were able to get out of this is it cut down. I went ahead and cut the ends off of it and cut the sides off of it, partially because I'm using the ends for some mocha megane stuff later, future videos. But the overall billet that I forged out with this was 12.5 inches long. This overall knife design right here is 9 inches long. So I was able to get a pretty good size billet out of this, and at no point did I overheat it and melt it. I had some close moments. I had some moments where I thought, whew, we're about to lose this. But we were able to, you know, get it to not do that. So, guys, again, hopefully y'all are excited about this, and hopefully y'all are pumped about seeing the next episode where we actually go through and we cut this out and we do some bevels, and you actually start getting to see all the coolness that's inside this. So, guys, Thank y'all for coming by and watching this video. If y'all would, give this video a thumbs up, share this video or one of my other videos. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell so you get notified when we actually turn this into something that really looks like a knife. Guys, y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there, and I will catch y'all next time.